My mom actually left the church when she found out that about Joseph Smith's polygamy. You said earlier something about the origins of polygamy or shady or whatever. I mean, I'm sure you've read, what is it? What's that Compton book?
Loneliness.
Yes, In Sacred Loneliness.
Todd's an old friend of mine.
Amazing man. But my mother called me and said, "What's the difference between Joseph Smith and Warren Jeffs?" She said, "Joseph Smith is marrying 14-year-old girls. Evidence is overwhelming that he was having sex with them, and he was marrying other men's wives. Was it like 9 of his first 12 wives were actively married to other men? He'd send them on a mission, and then they'd marry." So it was very upsetting for her, and that's why that was one thing that caused her to leave the church. She figured that Joseph Smith couldn't be a prophet if he's, with little girls.
Well, let me give you a kind of lengthy response to that, theoretical and then practical. I remember one of the most impressive talks I've ever heard was a talk by a historian named Stanley Kimball, who taught at the University of Southern Illinois. And he came and spoke in Los Angeles, where I was in grad school. And he talked about what he called the 3 levels of the gospel. He was an LDS historian, but working mostly outside of Utah. And he said there's level A. And level A is kind of the Sunday school version where the Mormons are always right and the non-Mormons are just often wicked and all that sort of thing. Then there's the anti-Mormon version where the Mormons are almost always evil, and the non-Mormons were putting up with these horrible people and treated them better than they deserved, probably. Level C, he said, though, is the true version. And he says, level C is a more human version. Mormons, the leaders, the members, are fallible. They make mistakes. They do things sometimes that we wish they hadn't. But they're basically good. And he said, it's basically like level A. He said, the trouble is when people are content on level A, but if they're exposed to level B too much, then he says the only hope for them is to work their way on through to level C. And he says, as a historian, I wish everybody would do that. Now, on the polygamy issue, first of all, I would challenge several of those claims. I think the evidence is pretty conclusive that Joseph was not having sex with most of these women. Maybe not with any of them.
Wasn't the purpose of polygamy, though, was to multiply and,
but one of my friends, Ugo Perego in Italy, has done a lot of research on DNA of Joseph Smith's family. He has a website on this, actually. You can look it up. I forgot what it's called. If you look up Perego, P-E-R-E-G-O. He's an Italian geneticist, but LDS. Lived here in Salt Lake for quite a few years, actually. But he's back in Rome now. And Ugo has analyzed scores and scores of people who claim to be descended from the plural marriages of Joseph Smith. So far, he has found no evidence of anybody outside the descendants of Emma who's actually descended from Joseph Smith. There's no genetic evidence of anybody. Now, you'd think if this is going on a lot, there'd be lots of them. And I'm not ruling out there might be one someday, but there hasn't been one found yet. And he's been working at it for a long, long time. And in the case of Sarah Kimball particularly, that's the 14-year-old you're talking about, there's just no evidence that...
Helen Marr?
Helen Marr, yeah, Helen Marr, yeah, sorry. There's no evidence that marriage was consummated, so... You can argue, and it's murky. Again, who knows? People don't normally publish that, but there's no evidence for it. And so right now I'd have to say we need to be cautious about this, about what we conclude.
Well, Brigham Young had kids, and
Brigham Young definitely did.
How many of his wives were married to other men, do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. A few were, but...
I think it was 11, wasn't it?
But I don't think it was that many. But if you want to read the best treatment of that, I'd recommend Brian Hales, who has published 4 volumes, I think, on early Mormon polygamy.
What do you think of In Sacred Loneliness, Compton's book?
It's a good book, but I don't agree with it all. There are a couple of other books edited by Newell Bringhurst and Craig Foster that I'd recommend on early Mormon polygamy. The second volume's just come out, and they're edited volumes, multiple essays by different people. Newell Bringhurst is an apostate Mormon, if you will. I mean, he'll tell you that. I know him well. And Craig is a believing Mormon. So it's a pretty unbiased collection. And I think it's some of the best stuff that's ever been done on the subject yet, and it undoes a lot of the more sensational claims.
Yeah,
so
I read a lot of them. Yeah. I read a lot of them when Mom left.
Yeah. Well, I'd recommend the Craig Foster and Newell Bringhurst books. and Brian Hale's books. So, yeah.
That's Ziggy's.